Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of Pinball in the Machine, a podcast by awakeners and for awakeners. This is where we discuss the, okay, I am now officially losing my shit aspect of what might loosely be termed spiritual awakening. So if you've been thinking about this stuff recently, and by the way, we think more and more people are waking up to it, why not listen in? You may find you're not alone, and actually it's all perfectly normal. Each week, my dear friend Greg and I meet to discuss our experiences and thoughts, as well as diving into feedback or questions from all you lovely wakies out there. So let's begin. I'm Tom, and I'm here with Greg. Greg, how are you doing? And apologies for the break.
Hi, Tom. I'm doing really well, thank you, and I've missed you. It's been a while.
You too.
I usually say it's been a week, but it's been considerably longer. And I'm trying to remember where we left off, but I do, of course. So I've had, 3 weeks or something of portal time. I've been going through the portal and really practicing that. And maybe that's a point, sometimes I get the feeling that people think they're just going to meditate and it happens. But to me, it's a practice. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. So I've been able to go through the portal now in seconds and and stay there for quite a while. In fact, it takes me a little while to come back. I'm aware that I'm back, but it takes me a little while to get back in, if you know what I mean.
I do. I would say that I actually am probably in the polar opposite place to you, because I feel like I took a 3-week holiday from the portal. I don't know whether that's a normal experience for people when they kind of go away or go into a different environment. You kind of, I don't know whether you get out of sync or you're just prioritizing more worldly matters, like, finding the kids some ice cream and trying to find out where the saucepans are in the house. But you do end up, I find, sort of moving away from your kind of day-to-day ritual or practice.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you come back to that, come back into it, it's so much slower, and you're just not match fit. It's not a problem at all. And actually, maybe, and I'll see whether this is true or not, there's some benefit in having a little break every now and then. I don't know.
Yeah.
But certainly that's what I did. So we'll have to see. It might be total garbage from me this week, but let's give it a go.
Yeah.
I was going to mention as well, because when I was in Italy was where I went. I actually went to see some of the. We talked about Marcus Aurelius in the last podcast,
yes,
and the Stoicism. I actually went to sort of, I wouldn't say pay homage, but I certainly was looking out for him everywhere I went. And there were some nice little pieces there, statues and columns. But the thing that I kind of had forgotten was that for all of his stoicism and wisdom, he raised an absolute batshit lunatic of a son. and I don't know if you've ever seen the film Gladiator, the Russell Crowe one, where but actually, apparently, and this is talking to a historian, that the depiction of Commodus, the emperor, in that is actually not far off at all in terms of this wildly narcissistic individual who, it just made me think. Really, it's kind of like it's not enough just to be stoic.
No, I think there was an MP, Francis Pym, said at one point that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Oh, that's a nice one. And
I think they threw him out of the party at that point because they just won a landslide, and he threw the warning out there, and I think that was his.
Yeah.
So
I was I was thinking about that a little bit, but no, generally, it's all good. So shall we? So should we crack on?
We were talking about demons.
We were talking about demons. So I would be interested to hear what you've been thinking about in the last 3 weeks in terms of the sort of progress from the last conversation that we had.
Well, yeah, I keep thinking that we're opening a can of worms. And when you study the ancient texts like we do, in my case, it doesn't leave me any further forward coming to demons, because sometimes it says they're fallen angels, sometimes they're not fallen angels. Sometimes it says they're the giant Nephilim. It could be Satan. Plato says they're warriors to be worshipped and adored. I'm thinking, well, what the actual, right? Because what is it? And I'm also imagining a time, we talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls and things like that, and I think they're amazing. And when you look at some of this cuneiform stuff, how does anybody interpret that? I mean, it's all just bits of chips out of a rock, as far as I can see. But I'm imagining a time, I don't know, thousands of years into the future, where scholars find and study scraps of ancient English texts. You see, the language has long since died out. We're long since history. And they find these texts, and they're reading them to determine what the truth was. And yet what they don't realize, that the original author was being sarcastic.
Yeah.
So in fact, the meaning would be the opposite of what was written. So who knows? But I guess for me, there are two elements. The one is that the frightening thing. The demons to me are the things that frighten us. They don't necessarily show up like that. It's the stuff that we're doing, or we're not doing, or we're avoiding, or we're craving. Okay, the demons to me are the things that scare us. And so what we tend to do is we project that onto other people. So they're the ones who are the problem. They're the ones who did this and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
And so what I often say to therapists, because they'll say, oh, Greg, my practice isn't going all that well. And sometimes I think, well, and I have said this to two of them, how do you expect your clients to sit with their demons when you haven't sat with yours? Which didn't go down too well, but that's the truth. If I'm saying to someone, well, I can help you through this, well, best if I've been through it myself. Because then they know, when I'm talking to them, they know that I know. Yeah. It's not out of a book. And we were talking about this before, that, when you get people who go by the book because that's all they know, and there are other people who have the experience and know it differently. So I think, to me, sitting with my demons is looking at my dark side, or as Jung called it, the shadow. Yes. And I just call it working through my stuff. And it takes years, but it takes the intention, I think, to say, okay, what stops me doing this? Or why am I so addicted to whatever it is? Sex, drugs, rock and roll, doesn't matter. Because those are the demons, in a sense, driving that. And it's always fear. Yes. So that's one type of demon. And then when I started to journey, early on, I met the devil, or what I assumed to be the devil, twice on two separate journeys. And the thing that amazed me was I wasn't scared. I just said, oh, you're the devil. And I laughed. And then he was gone, or it was gone. But then I met a demonic thing, huge thing, demonic, right? And I wasn't scared. I'm thinking, this is weird. I'm not scared. And then it came to me that this was a lost soul. Yeah. And I said to it, and I called it the chief demon. This was the big one. I just said, well, I've got all this love coming through me from, the divine, or whatever you want to call it. You're welcome. Come on home. And now he is my chief of security. And then I did something on it was either the same journey or the one after it, where I was aware of all these demons. I mean, thousands. I just, come on home. We got tons of love. Here it is, And they're now my crew, and they're called the Demonix, as far as I'm concerned.
Sounds like a band.
And we rock. And I'll tell you what, I've had no adverse effects that I'm aware of as a result of doing it. Now, I'm not saying that's the thing to do, but that was my approach to it. And the thing that got me there was, through doing this work, the fear went. And once the fear is not there, you know who you are. And when you know who you are, you're not afraid. So the thing works all the way around. Okay. Amazing. You know who you are. You're not afraid. You're not afraid. Then you can, encounter these things, whatever they are, and say, well, I'm not afraid. What have you got? What do you need? Well, it seems to me like you're lacking love, because if you're trying to scare me, you're not coming from a good place. Yeah. And it was like, come on home. We're partying. And I think the idea that there is no actual path and there's no actual journey because there's nothing actually outside of us, then if that's true, what do we have to worry about? What is there to worry about?
That's so funny you say that. I had the exact same thought two nights ago. It was the most comforting thing in the world. It was in one of those moments where I think I was, I was in that half sleep stage, and maybe there was loads of stuff running around my head, probably because I'm kind of got to go back into everything, and then I suddenly stopped and was like, but that's all external. It's just me. So I was approaching it from two different sides as well, and just thinking about it over the last few weeks. And actually, it's been really helpful because it's identified a couple of, I think, maybe little trigger points in me. So, for example, I noticed I don't get angry very often, and I get angry with my kids even less. But there's one particular thing that I get angry with my son, and it's when he doesn't look after his lips and in the sun, and then he gets cold sores, and they're really painful. I was like, why am I and I get angry with him when he doesn't put the cream on, and when and I feel like it. And then I suddenly I had a revelation. I realized, he's about to go up to secondary school, and when I was in secondary school, I went through a phase where I had massive acne, all over, and there was a real sense of sort of self-loathing. I don't know whether it was tied to sort of low self-esteem or whatever it was, but that's what's happening. I'm just transferring back to fear about, will he feel like I feel, or will he, be, bullied about it, and also just the pain and the feeling myself of being that adolescent and being crippled by something, and then reflecting on it later and realizing it wasn't actually a big deal. No one else cared.
Yeah.
It was just you that worried about it.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It really is. And it's a lovely form of self-therapy, just to pick. The other one that I've been thinking about, and this one I need to do some more work on, but that whole kind of modern thought process about exercise. It's kind of like, if you're feeling a little bit anxious or so go and beast it, go for a run, go do all this sort of stuff. Now, I know that the research shows that exercise is really good for you, isn't it? It fills you full of lots of chemicals and helps you build and be strong. But is there an element where people are often, in some cases, almost using it just to mask having to do any work?
Yes. When you see people, men particularly, who are very ripped, I'm not talking about just buff, but ripped, really doing the big thing at the gym. They've got huge muscles. Well, that is male anorexia.
Okay.
And what's happening is and it doesn't matter, men, women, dogs, cats, we're all trying to feel good. And so we want to avoid the pain. We're designed to avoid pain. And the only way out of it, to me now, is through it. I avoided it for much of my life, just like everybody else would, And I think part of this podcasting for me is to kind of, if people just become aware that there is a way through all of this, whatever is happening, and it has to be with us because we are the only thing we actually have control of.
Yeah.
And I remember in the indigenous people were talking about the Earth as Turtle Island, right? And somebody said, Turtle Island, what do you mean? Well, the Earth is on a turtle, a giant turtle. And they said, but what's the turtle on? What's the turtle standing on? And they said, it's turtles all the way down, right? And I thought, well, that's pretty glib, okay? And recently I was watching a video on fractals because of the holographic elements that I've been shown when I've been journeying. And in this fractal video, as they showed you the fractal, I could see a turtle in part of the pattern. And I watched the turtle. And as they zoomed into the fractal, it was turtles after turtles after turtles. However small you went, there was another turtle and another turtle. And I went, okay. It was turtles all the way down. So as we're exploring this stuff, and then science comes in and says, well, actually, if you look at it like, and boom, 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 and you go, well, there it is. then again, the fear goes. And then sitting with your demon says, okay, what have you got? You know, if you're here to kill me, why haven't you done it? Why are you making my life miserable?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then the information comes, and then we can do stuff with it if we choose.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that I like turtles all the way down, and actually that leads on to the next, possibly to the next piece I was going to talk about. You know, in terms of kind of a synchronicity or whatever you might have. So I met up with my wife's uncle, and it turns out that he's writing a book on serendipity.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, the first thing I kind of thought to myself was, hey, you know, I'm really interested in synchronicity. He's really interested in serendipity, and we're now talking together. Is that a coincidence? Is it serendipity, or is it synchronicity? And I started getting a bit confused about everything. So I wondered whether you could give me your thoughts on the kind of what you think the differences are between these elements, and how you view them or encounter them in your life.
Wow. Okay. I think synchronicity and serendipity are different for me in that synchronicity are things that happen in sequence to each other that seems convenient, perhaps. And to me, serendipity is when something seems to fail, and through that failure comes something even better than what was expected.
Yes.
The simple things like Post-it notes, where the glue failed and the guy was using them to mark as bookmarks in his hymn book or something. I don't know. I can't remember the story exactly.
Like, and then silly putty as well.
Silly putty, yeah. So that to me is the serendipity element of it. And I'm listening to Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk. Amazing stuff. And the more I listen and the more I sit with stuff, the more I think, well, okay, remember where we came in, we were talking about the male and the female. And so the male is the item, the male is the thing, and the female is the relationship between things. And so rather than getting into the thing, I'm thinking, well, what about the relationship between the things? So in other words, when something, and this is where I'm going, okay, it's coming now. It's the old story to pay attention.
Yeah.
Because we miss a lot of stuff. And the more quiet I am, the more I pick up. Whereas when I'm busy, I'm missing all the good stuff. I'm too busy doing my thing, thing. And rather than sit in the middle of it. And Thich Nhat Hanh says there are 3 escape plans, 3 elements of escape. And one is emptiness. The other one is signlessness. That's not identifying with the thing. And the third one is aimlessness. So I've been practicing all of them, particularly aimlessness, which I'm really liking very much. And it's amazing. So I think with all of these things, it would be, okay, as I become aware of it, I could label it, sure. Or I could say, hey, how is this impacting me? What can I learn from this? Whatever it is. If I stub my toe, if I, missed an appointment or anything, I think, why did I do that? What stopped me, going that way? Then I think we're in a real learning curve.
Yeah.
So that probably doesn't answer the question very well.
No, guys, it's all good. I thought about it as well in terms of, you talked about, the difference between sort of keeping busy, people being so busy they miss stuff. I think sometimes the busier you are, the more likely that you'll get serendipity, because you're in the real world, you're making contacts, you're interacting, things are going up, things are going down. The more things you do, some fail, some succeed, but you're not listening, as you say, at the same time. So it may be that within that there's a load of synchronicities coming through that will have a whole different effect on you, and you completely miss them.
Yeah.
And then you look backwards and you view the serendipity as the coincidences of the things that happened that had a positive impact. They call it a happy accident, don't they? But I don't particularly think it's it's destined or written in the stars. Whereas I'm starting to believe that now, if you really tuned yourself into every synchronicity that's being thrown at you, I think you'll make a lot more progress spiritually and in the real world, rather than just being super busy, not listening, and hoping that serendipity will carry you through.
Yeah. It's also putting yourself in the way of it.
Yeah.
So I won't go into it. Anyway, a long story. I was teaching some watercolor painting. And what I didn't realize was that while I was showing the process went AWOL. I couldn't do it. And I kept thinking, why can't I get this to flow? I'm explaining the process to this group and I'm showing them on camera, here's the thing. And it's just not flowing. And I thought, that's weird. And so the call ended and they said, did you record it? And I said, no. They said, we'd like to, see more of it. So I started to do some more of these, little sketches just with watercolor, no sketching actually, just to paint this thing. And suddenly it all worked. And I could do them one after the other, because I wasn't thinking.
Yeah.
So what happened was when I was teaching, I was in my left brain, which is where I do not need to be when I'm painting. And when I'm painting, I'm in my right brain. And so now I've got to learn how to go between the two and make it work. That's a big challenge. But I would never have learned this had I not said yes to the offer to teach, because I didn't put it out there. Somebody came to me and said, will you show us?
Yeah, yeah. And then in the failure of the process, you now have a plan in terms of how you're going to, expand and improve. Oh, well, I think we might have caught it. But
well,
anyway,
it taught me a big lesson. And they said, oh, thank you so much for sharing your time and everything else. And I said, you have no idea how much I'm learning from this process.
Talking about sharing our time, Greg, it's time up.
Oh, my God.
Already. Which was a shame because there was some.
You mean I put my makeup on for nothing?
Well, I know because there was stuff I was hoping to get into, later on about kind of anger and rage, but maybe we can follow up on that in a future episode.
Oh, I'll be on my best behavior, I promise you. Yeah.
But yeah, so look, everybody, that's all we've got time for this week on Pinball in the Machine, and we really hope you enjoyed it. Maybe think about something you haven't considered before. So just to let you know, we do now plan to be back with weekly episodes. I am no longer running away. And to reiterate, we do really want to hear from you. So that's at hello@pinballandthemachine.com or on the Facebook page of our production group, Guides Not Gurus. And you can also find us on TikTok and Instagram and also at our website, pinballandthemachine.com, and on YouTube. But other than that, from myself, Tom, it's goodbye and thank you. And from yourself, Greg.
Good day.
Super, guys. We will see you next week.